Hello and welcome. In this demonstration, we are going to see how to make use of Pulsar Copilot to handle some more complex and descriptive design tasks. We've seen in some of our other Pulsar Copilot examples how well it can work with us to develop Pulsar applications and make use of our JS API. But style matters too. Since Pulsar Copilot is built on top of OpenAI's powerful ChatGPT LLM, we can make use of its vast knowledge of styling and web development. Tasks which may take even a seasoned developer who is less familiar with the complexities of UI design and implementation can be achieved by working with Pulsar Copilot and leveraging a little research. The component we are going to develop today will reside on the overview page of a work order object within Pulsar's Field Service mobile application. We have a mock-up image of what we'd like to achieve. The job progress title at the top will be handled by FSL simply by titling our document when we set it up in our Pulsar settings, so we can ignore that for now. We have three elements that we want to display here: the appointment number of the service appointment, a rounded pill-shaped button containing the current status of that service appointment, and an element below this indicating the current status of the work order. When I was presented with this image, I did not know the appropriate name for this element. I asked a colleague and they informed me that it was likely called a chevron progress flow. Using the correct terminology can greatly improve Pulsar Copilot's abilities. Let's take a detailed look at our design document for this component. Once again, we've written this document in Markdown, which LLMs are highly capable of reading and gathering context. We start with an overview. A custom component that resides on an FSL overview page for a work order and displays the current status of both the associated service appointment, if it exists, and the work order identified by the overview page. It should display the service appointment number next to a button which can update the service appointment status according to that field's schema. Upon update, it should save the change. If validation errors are returned from the attempt to update, they should be displayed to the user in a modal. Beneath this, display the status of the work order defined by the overview page via a chevron progress flow. From left to right, the stages should be dispatched, arrived on site, in progress, on hold, and completed. The current stage should be highlighted. Stages to the left of the current stage should be shaded in a secondary color to indicate that they have been completed. Highlight the completed state in green. This lays out our component's broad goals in terms that Copilot can understand. Context is key for all LLMs, so providing an introduction with the broad strokes is a great place to start. Next, we detail the assets we will provide in our project file. This is simply so that Copilot knows what it can expect in the project folder. After that, we give some development guidelines. These help constrain Copilot to vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and tell us how it should name files. Finally, we dive into the details of our component. The component should take up the full width and height of its parent. The component should have a white background. The component should have no margin or border around it. Next, we go on to the service appointment status feature. The service appointment part should show the appointment number unlabeled. Next to the appointment number, a rounded pill-shaped button with the current status field value label should be shown. Clicking the status field value label button should show the list of available status value labels. Selecting one should attempt to update the service appointment status field. The button should have a green background with white text. The button should be aligned with the appointment number text. And then on to the work order status process. The work order part should show each phase from dispatched, arrived on site, in progress, on hold, and completed as an individual segment. The segments should be styled like a chevron process flow. The segments should have the appropriate label in white text on a colored background. The current segment should be black unless it is the completed segment, which should be green. Segments to the left of the current segment should be dark gray. Segments to the right of the current segment should be light gray. The first and last segments should have a rounded end cap. The first segment should not have a chevron on its left side. The last segment should not have a chevron on its right side. Here we've given our best effort at the finer points of each portion of our component. With this detailed document, we can get started building with Pulsar Copilot. Let's see how it handles these more advanced requests for our user interface. We will drag our job progress.md file in here, and we'll say, let's get started building this component. Let's see what Copilot has for us. Starts out laying out our file structure. Those are the file names that we requested, index.html and job progress.js. And it's laying out our component features. So all looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and have it build our index.html. So let's get started with the index.html. It's giving us a simple scaffold to get started. It mentions a import of our file, which doesn't exist yet, but we will have to make. We've made our index.html file over here. Let's copy this code and paste it in here and save it. And let's get started finishing this. So we'll build our job progress.js file as well. We'll go create a file for that while it builds our code. As we get more familiar with Copilot, a lot of this boilerplate Pulsar setup gets sort of easy to overlook because we can take for granted that it does a good job with it. It's breaking our functions down into nice, reusable, and easily defined bits of work. And this generally looks pretty good. It does mention the chevron style progress bar, but we will have to see how it did in rendering that. So we'll copy this code and we'll save it. Now it's time to bundle this up as a Pulsar app, and we'll take a look and see what our first iteration looks like. We may have to work with Copilot a little bit here to get it to our final state, but that's what it's for. We've uploaded this Pulsar app to load on the overview screen of work orders. And let's go check the results. We'll open SA0072, which is in the dispatched state. You can see the work order is also in the dispatched state. And when we look at our job progress component here, we can see that the service appointment is demonstrating that it is in the dispatch state on the button, and our work order in this flow is also in dispatch state, but we can see that there are no chevrons. Otherwise, it looks good. It's got nice rounded ends. The button is pill-shaped as we asked it to be. And yeah, the style generally looks pretty good. So let's check out some of the functionality here. Let's click this button and see what happens. So this is not what we want. This is the native Safari alert, and it's got some sort of text input here and an OK and a cancel button. This might update if we maybe typed the correct value in here, but this is not at all what we want. So we'll make a note that we'd like to have a list of options to pick from launched from a modal. And when you select one, it should dismiss. We'll worry about whether or not the update works later. So let's just dismiss that for now. And let's take a look at the work order chevron process flow and see if that's displaying correctly for other states. So we'll go to another service appointment, which has the work order in the arrived on site state. And this is what we expect. It's black on arrived on site and dark gray on dispatched. Let's check another one, which will be in the in progress state. And sure enough, that also looks good. Let's go check an on hold work order. And that also looks good. And we'll check the final one to see if the completed one is in green. And it is. So whoop, there it goes, refreshed. That all looks great. But let's make some notes about we want to fix the chevrons and update how the button works. So we'll go back to Copilot and see if we can make those changes. So we're back with Pulsar Copilot, and we've asked it to address two issues. First, the chevron process flow does not have chevron shapes between interior segments. Can we fix this with CSS? Let's see what it says. it says yes, we can fix that, and it's going to apply some styles to get our triangles. And it seems to be understanding our desire here with we don't want a right pointing triangle on the end, just on the interior segments. And so let's have it update the code. Wouldn't really expect any changes in the top half of this, as this is all container code and the service appointment status button, which we shouldn't be modifying. But down lower here, we've got the render work order progress method, which should be where our changes apply. You can see it added a job progress flow class, and it's changing the inline styles of the items and adding a few more style changes here. And we're getting the CSS changes for our index HTML. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and copy this and update our code in jobprogress.js. And let's grab these styles to update our index.html. Drop these in here, clean up our code a little bit. We can see it's going to be using this polygon math to kind of get right angles. So that should generate the triangles that we want for our chevrons. We'll have to see if they apply as expected. But let's move on to our second issue. Let's ask it to fix the modals. So the modal that launches when we click the service appointment status button should display a list of selectable states. Basically, we want this to be a little bit more user-friendly. So when we click one, it should dismiss and update the state, and we really don't want it to use that Safari alert for this. We'd like it to use a styled modal. So it is answering our question and probably writing some code over here. Let's go see if it is doing that. Yep, there it goes. So we can see that it's now creating a modal with some styles. So that should be pretty good. It's getting our, yep, it's going to show a list, and it's getting our states from the get sObject schema up here. And yeah, so that looks like it's going to present things. It's going to update when we click a choice and dismiss. It's not using the alert, which is great. We'll see how these validation errors are displayed. That sounds a little confusing if they're going to display in the modal, but that looks pretty good. So let's take this code and update job progress. And I think at this point, we're ready to bundle this up and check the results. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've updated our component and put it on Salesforce, and we can see that our job progress is displayed here. We've got a few differences. There aren't borders, and we are missing our chevrons. That's not great. So this button looks the same as expected. Let's see if we can inspect some of these segments and kind of find out what's going on. So we can see that the chevron segment class is applied, and it's got this margin right here, which if we adjust this, maybe we'll get a clue. Aha. So we can see here that this margin is creating an overlap, but there isn't an indented chevron on the left side of these segments. So this chevron just doesn't appear. It's overlapping, and we can't see it. So that's something we're going to have to get Pulsar Copilot to adjust for us. Maybe we can suggest that it provide an overlapping chevron style with a left indent on the interior segments. And so let's click this. Okay, so yeah, that's certainly is a way to present this data. That does appear to be a modal. Let's make sure. Okay, we're down here. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. Yeah, so it is in a modal, but we don't see a way to close the modal. We've got a lot of buttons. Let's see what happens if we click one. There is some logic on these that I know about that will prevent most of these updates from happening. So we get our validation error displayed in our modal as we asked, but this isn't really a good user experience, and it's kind of an unusable component at this point because we can't dismiss this. So that's something we're going to have to get Copilot to fix for us. So we'll maybe have to tell it to make some sort of list-based modal or a drop-down perhaps, but let's go see what we can do. And we're back with Pulsar Copilot. We've decided that we're going to start with our chevron process flow adjustment. We've written a prompt here for segments in our chevron process flow that occur after the first segment. Let's add a mirrored indent so that the overlapping chevron can display. That sounds like it should cover what we're trying to get it to do. So let's go ahead and see what it says in response to this. And it's going to open up the editor and start changing the code. So we don't really expect any changes until we get down to our work order progress section here. And okay, we're seeing a few changes here, adding some additional polygon logic, which makes sense. I'm not so sure about this else block given the I greater than 0. That seems like we're going to be adding some clipping to our end on the right, or no, on the left, but maybe it's fine. So let's go ahead and see if this fixes our issue. So we've updated our job progress component, and we can see that the right end cap here has an indent. We can see a chevron here. We don't see any of our other chevrons. So let's inspect these like we did before. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on so we can give Copilot some advice or maybe make some changes on our own. So let's change this margin right, which we did before, and we can see that about 5 pixels on that looks actually really good, but we've still got this issue on our right end cap. And if we look at the clip path for this last one, we can see that it's an inline style that's being applied to all of the segments. So all of the segments are sort of getting the left bump out arrow and a right bump in arrow, so to speak. So we need this to be more like the first segment, which doesn't have an arrow on one side. So let's go back and we'll ask Copilot to fix that for us, because doing that polygon math is a little tricky. And we're back with Pulsar Copilot, and we're going to ask it to work on our chevron process flow here. We've asked it to remove the right side of the clip path on the last chevron segment so that the rounded end cap is undisturbed. This should hopefully fix that little indent on our right side. It's jumping into the code, and we're going to skip pretty much all of this stuff, as it is not the section of code that we care about for right now. And down here in the work order progress, okay, we can see it made a change to our stages.length -1. So that is the right side. It's modified the clip path to be different than the interior clip paths, which are also different than the first clip path. So this should be kind of what we want. It's echoing that it is doing the right thing. So let's go ahead and just kind of see, well, before I go ahead, let's also make this change in index.html. So we'll paste our code into job progress and save it. And we'll go and change this margin right to 5 pixels, which we saw in our console debugger to be the right move. So one thing to note, when you make a change to a file and you don't inform Copilot, anytime Copilot will make a change to that file, it's obviously going to overwrite that value because it doesn't know about it. So it's going to assume that -10 on that margin right is correct until we tell it otherwise. But for now, we're just going to remember that and move on. Let's see how this looks. And we're back. We've updated our job progress component card. And we can see that for the most part, our chevrons look good. except for this last one here that has too much spacing. So let's dig into our code and rendered HTML and see if we can figure out what's going on here. We've got our segments here, these divs. This is our last segment, which if we take a look at, we've got no margin, we've got 10 padding, no margin anywhere. So let's take a look at our other segments. They seem to have a right margin of 5, which we added, and a left margin of -10, which would have the effect of pulling these to the left. And I think that's exactly what we're missing here on this end cap. So let's go ahead and see if we add a margin left, -10 pixels. And sure enough, that fixes our alignment issue. So let's go add that to our code, and we'll also begin to work on our modal issues. And we're back with Copilot. We are going to make this change so that the margin left -10 pixels is in our rightmost segment. So we want that up here. We're going to actually have Copilot make this change for us, and that is because we want Copilot to maintain this change going forward. If we were to make the change ourselves, we'd have to tell it that we made the change, possibly by dragging the code into it and saying, hey, we've made this change. But it's usually almost better to have it make a change like this. So we'll just ask it to add that -10 pix style to the rightmost segment in our chevron process flow, and we'll kind of wait to see that it does that. I'll take this time to remind everyone that we should be making version control commits along the way as we make these updates. You never know if you're going to get a bad segment of code from Pulsar Copilot. It's good to be able to revert it yourself. You can always restart these conversations. But anyway, we can see that Pulsar Copilot has made this change. So now we should go ahead and try and fix our modal issue. So the best way to do that, I think at this point, is to change our approach. We've tried to cram a modal in kind of a small space, and I think that makes it difficult to display well. And let's just see if we can do something different. So let's go with a drop-down menu of our values. We'll try and get Copilot to make that happen and do the update when we click one of those. And if we have an error, then we'll ask it to show a modal containing that error. This should be a little bit more user-friendly if it works. And hopefully Copilot will understand the intent a bit more. Its current attempts have been not so great. So I'll ask it to try a different approach and do a drop-down menu, and when the value is selected, perform the update. If an error occurs, show the error in a modal. Let's go see. It's going to probably make a fair amount of changes. So it needs to add in some new features. It's pretty hard to follow everything that it's doing without reading it line by line, but let's get our summary over here. So it's going to include a new select drop-down menu instead of launching the modal. So it seems like it understood what we wanted to do. It's asking us if we want to style the drop-down or error modal further. Let's tell it to make it consistent with what we're currently doing. This is a little bit risky, but you know, for the purposes of speeding things up, sometimes it can be good to take some of these risks, but we shall see. And we're updating a few things. We're adding some SLDS styles, it looks like, which hopefully will work well with what we've done. So now we're just going to go ahead and update our code and ultimately see what this looks like. So we'll update our job progress.js and save that, and let's go check the results. Once again, we've made our updates and uploaded them to Salesforce, and we've got them displaying here on our job progress card. We can see that the completed state is shown for a service appointment now in a drop-down and no longer a green pill-shaped button, which is a little unfortunate, but the behavior here is much, much, much better. This is a native list display. We can pick any one of these. Let's just try canceled. Any one of those would have fired an error. So this is expected behavior. Once again, this is too small and not really going to work for us, but at least we can close it. So that kind of shows you the iterative process. Obviously, we could go a few more steps here. We could ask it to style this drop-down menu as a green pill-shaped button. We could have it try to reduce the padding and or margins around the modal so that it takes up a more reasonable amount of space in this job progress component. And those would be great exercises to go forward with. But in the interest of keeping this a more timely video, we will stop here. I hope we can see how well Pulsar Copilot works and is a great companion for developing code on Pulsar.
Thank you for watching. For more information, visit our website at luminixinc.com or send an email to sales@luminixinc.com.